In the year 860, Balaputra, the Maharaja of Suvarnadvipa and ruler of Srivijaya, embarked on a significant religious and cultural endeavor that would connect Southeast Asia with the Indian subcontinent in an enduring manner. His reign marked a period of Srivijayan influence, not only in maritime Southeast Asia, but also in the broader Indian Ocean region. Balaputra is particularly remembered for his contributions to the flourishing of Buddhism, a major cultural and religious force in both regions. One of his most notable acts was the construction of a Buddhist temple and monastery at Nalanda, India, a site renowned for its scholarly activities and its pivotal role in Buddhist education and discourse. This gesture not only solidified Srivijaya's relationship with India, but also underscored the cosmopolitan nature of Buddhist learning at the time. The construction of the monastery was made possible by the generosity of King Devapaladeva of the Pala dynasty, who granted Balaputra a tract of land in Nalanda for the project. This act of collaboration between the Srivijayan ruler and the Pala king illustrates the deep connections between Buddhist kingdoms across the Indian Ocean and highlights the shared religious and intellectual heritage that transcended geographical boundaries. The Pala dynasty, being ardent patrons of Buddhism, especially the Mahayana school, found common ground with Srivijaya, whose rulers were similarly devoted to the propagation of the Dharma. The donation of land for the monastery also reflects Devapaladeva's recognition of Srivijaya's prominence in the Buddhist world. Nalanda, by the 9th century, had already established itself as one of the greatest centers of learning in the world. Scholars from across Asia flocked to its halls to study various branches of knowledge, including Buddhist philosophy, logic, and metaphysics. The addition of a Srivijayan-sponsored monastery was significant in bolstering the institution's reputation as a truly international hub of Buddhist scholarship. Through this initiative, Balaputra ensured that scholars and monks from his kingdom could partake in the rich intellectual atmosphere of Nalanda, further strengthening the cultural exchange between Southeast Asia and India. This project also symbolized Srivijaya's role as a protector and promoter of Buddhism, a role that would continue for several centuries. The Nalanda inscription, which records Balaputra's contribution, stands as an important testament to his reign and the transnational ties that characterized the Buddhist world of the time. The inscription not only acknowledges his patronage, but also provides valuable historical evidence of the connections between distant regions. Srivijaya, as a thalassocracy, was dependent on maritime trade routes, and its religious and cultural affiliations with India helped to foster both spiritual and economic relationships. Balaputra's act of piety in sponsoring the construction of the monastery thus had broader implications for the kingdom, as it reinforced Srivijaya's prestige and influence in the region. In the year 907, the Sumbing volcano, one of the prominent volcanic mountains in central Java, Indonesia, experienced a significant eruption, as recorded in the Rukam inscription. This event is particularly notable because it was documented during a time when written records in Indonesia were scarce, reflecting the importance of the eruption's impact on the local population and the ruling elite. The eruption of Mount Sumbing not only had immediate geological and environmental effects, but also left a profound mark on the socio-political landscape of the region, as seen through the response of the authorities. The Rukam inscription, issued by the Medang Kingdom, provides insight into the aftermath of the eruption. It reveals that the disaster caused considerable damage to the surrounding villages and agricultural land, which were essential to the kingdom's economy. The volcanic ash and lava flows likely devastated crops, displaced communities, and disrupted local life. The rulers of the Medang Kingdom, aware of the hardships their people faced, took steps to alleviate the suffering caused by the eruption. The inscription records that the ruler granted tax relief and assistance to the affected areas, demonstrating a degree of compassion and responsibility from the ruling class during times of crisis. This response by the Medang rulers can be seen as an early example of disaster management and governance in Indonesian history. Natural disasters, particularly volcanic eruptions, have long been a part of life in the Indonesian archipelago, and rulers had to manage these crises effectively to maintain stability and order. The tax relief granted to the affected communities following the Sumbing eruption reflects the importance of maintaining agricultural productivity and ensuring the well-being of the people who formed the backbone of the kingdom's economy. This action helped prevent further unrest and reinforced the legitimacy of the Medang rulers as protectors of their subjects. The eruption of Sumbing also highlights the spiritual and religious dimensions of volcanic activity in Java. Volcanoes were often regarded as sacred, and their eruptions were sometimes interpreted as expressions of divine will or warnings from the gods. In the case of the Sumbing eruption, it is possible that the event was viewed through a spiritual lens, prompting religious rituals or ceremonies to appease the gods and prevent future disasters. The Rukem inscription may have served not only as a historical record, but also as a religious or symbolic gesture, emphasizing the need to maintain harmony between the human and spiritual worlds in the face of such natural events. The eruption of Mount Sumbing in 907, as recorded in the Rukem inscription, stands as an important moment in the early history of Indonesia. It sheds light on the resilience of the local population, the responsibility of the ruling class in times of crisis, and the deep spiritual connection between the Javanese people and their natural environment. The inscription also serves as a reminder of the ongoing relationship between volcanic activity and human society in Indonesia, a relationship that continues to shape the history and culture of the archipelago to this day. In the year 907, King Balatung, one of the most influential rulers of the Mataram Kingdom, made significant contributions to the political and cultural landscape of Central Java. Among his notable achievements was the creation of the Mantiase inscription, which serves as a critical historical document. It provides a list of the kings who preceded him in the Mataram dynasty. The Mantiase inscription not only reflects Balatung's desire to assert his legitimacy and authority by connecting himself to a lineage of powerful kings, but also offers modern historians valuable insight into the early history of the kingdom. This record highlights the importance of continuity and tradition in Javanese political culture, where the legitimacy of rulers was often reinforced through historical and genealogical claims. In addition to documenting the royal lineage, King Balatung made the strategic decision to move the capital of the Mataram Kingdom from Mamratipura to Po Pitu. This relocation of the capital was likely motivated by a combination of political, economic, and geographical factors. The shift to Po Pitu may have been intended to consolidate the king's power and place the royal center in a more secure or advantageous position. By moving the capital, Balatung not only reinforced his authority over the kingdom, but also ensured that the administrative center was in a location that could better support the kingdom's growth and defense. This decision reflects his strategic vision as a ruler, ensuring that the kingdom could thrive under his leadership. King Balatung's reign is also closely associated with the expansion of the Prambanan temple complex, one of the most iconic Hindu religious sites in Southeast Asia. The Prambanan temple, dedicated to the Hindu trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, had already been under construction prior to Balatung's reign, but his contributions greatly expanded its scale and significance. The expansion of Prambanan was not only a reflection of the king's devotion to Hinduism, but also a powerful statement of Mataram's wealth, influence, and cultural sophistication. Through the construction and expansion of monumental architecture, Balatung sought to project the kingdom's power both to its subjects and to neighboring regions, while also ensuring the temple complex remained a center of religious and cultural life for centuries to come. The Mantiase inscription and the other actions undertaken by King Balatung during his reign demonstrate the deep connection between political authority and religious devotion in the Mataram kingdom. By linking himself to the royal lineage through the inscription and contributing to the construction of a grand religious monument, Balatung was reinforcing the idea that his rule was sanctioned by the gods. In ancient Java, the king was often viewed as a divine or semi-divine figure, and Balatung's projects were a means of securing both his temporal power and his spiritual authority. This blending of political and religious power was a hallmark of Javanese kingship and allowed rulers like Balatung to maintain control over their subjects while promoting a cohesive cultural identity. In the year 914, the Warmadewa dynasty began to establish itself as the ruling power in Bali, marking the start of a significant era in the island's history. The Warmadewa dynasty, named after its founder, Srikisari Warmadewa, would go on to shape Bali's political, cultural, and religious landscape for centuries. This dynasty's rise to power reflected the growing importance of Bali within the broader regional networks of trade and political influence during the early 10th century. The emergence of the Warmadewa rulers also signaled a new phase of development for Bali, as the island began to integrate more fully into the wider Hindu-Buddhist cultural and religious milieu of Southeast Asia. Srikisari Warmadewa, the first recorded ruler of the dynasty, is believed to have come from a background of either Javanese or Srivijayan origin, reflecting Bali's connections with the larger kingdoms in Java and Sumatra. His reign and the establishment of the dynasty are documented in the Belenjong pillar inscription, which is one of the oldest written records from Bali. The inscription, written in both Old Balinese and Sanskrit, reveals the early efforts of the Warmadewa dynasty to consolidate power on the island and solidify their rule through military campaigns and religious devotion. Srikisari Warmadewa's reign laid the foundation for the dynasty's long-lasting influence in Bali, establishing a model of kingship that would be followed by his successors. The Warmadewa rulers were instrumental in promoting and expanding Hindu-Buddhist religious practices in Bali, which had already begun to take root in the preceding centuries. Under their rule, Bali became more deeply integrated into the cultural and religious networks of the Indonesian archipelago, particularly through its close ties with Java. The dynasty oversaw the construction of religious monuments and temples, contributing to the island's reputation as a center of Hindu-Buddhist worship and culture. These religious endeavors helped to establish a spiritual framework that continues to influence Bali to this day, where the blend of Hindu and indigenous Balinese traditions remains a defining characteristic of the island's culture. Politically, the Warmadewa dynasty played a crucial role in maintaining Bali's independence and sovereignty, while navigating its relationships with more powerful kingdoms on the neighboring islands of Java and Sumatra. During this period, Bali was a key player in the regional dynamics of power, balancing the influence of the Madang, and later the Majapahit kingdoms in Java, as well as the Srivijaya thalassocracy based in Sumatra. The Warmadewa rulers managed to maintain their control over Bali, while also fostering diplomatic and cultural exchanges with these larger political entities. This period of relative autonomy allowed Bali to develop its own unique cultural identity, distinct from its neighbors. In the year 928, during the reign of King Wa, the Mataram kingdom in central Java faced a significant disaster that would alter the course of its history. The capital, Mamratipura, was devastated, likely due to a massive eruption of Mount Merapi, one of the most active volcanoes in Indonesia. The eruption would have caused widespread destruction, not only to the capital city, but also to the surrounding agricultural lands that were crucial for the kingdom's economy. The devastation of the capital marked a turning point for the Mataram kingdom, as the eruption likely forced the royal court and its population to relocate in the aftermath of the catastrophe. Mount Merapi, located near the heart of the kingdom, had long been a source of both reverence and fear due to its frequent volcanic activity. For the people of Mataram, Merapi's eruption would have been interpreted not just as a natural disaster, but potentially as a divine or spiritual event, signaling the gods' displeasure. The eruption would have spewed massive amounts of ash, lava, and pyroclastic flows, devastating villages, farmlands, and infrastructure. In the context of the 10th century, such a disaster would have had a profound impact on the kingdom's political and economic stability, requiring the ruler to make significant decisions to ensure the survival of the state and its people. King Wa, who was on the throne during this tumultuous period, faced the challenge of rebuilding the kingdom in the wake of the disaster. While there are limited historical records about the details of his reign, it is believed that the destruction of Mamratipura prompted a major shift in the kingdom's center of power. Following the eruption, the royal court likely moved to a safer location, possibly toward East Java, which would later become a prominent center of political and cultural development. This relocation of the capital marked the beginning of a new phase in the kingdom's history, as the focus of Mataram's power gradually shifted away from central Java. The eruption of Mount Merapi in 928 not only had immediate consequences for the kingdom, but also likely influenced its long-term trajectory. The loss of Mamratipura may have weakened the centralized power structure of the kingdom, leading to internal fragmentation and regional instability. At the same time, it may have opened opportunities for new centers of power to emerge, as East Java eventually rose to prominence under later rulers. The volcanic disaster, while devastating, also underscored the resilience of the Mataram people, who managed to rebuild and continue their political and cultural activities, despite the loss of their capital. In the year 929, Nimpu Sindok made a decisive and historic move by relocating the seat of power of the Mataram kingdom from Mamratipura in central Java to Tamlang in East Java, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the kingdom's history. This shift in the capital was likely influenced by two major factors: the devastating eruption of Mount Merapi and the potential threat of invasion from Srivijaya, the powerful maritime kingdom based in Sumatra. The combination of these events pushed Nimpu Sindok to seek a more secure and strategically favorable location for the kingdom, away from the dangers of volcanic activity and foreign aggression. By moving the capital to Tamlang, Nimpu Sindok effectively established the Isiana dynasty, signaling a new era of rule in East Java. This move not only represented a geographical shift, but also a political and cultural transformation for the kingdom. The relocation allowed Nimpu Sindok to consolidate his power in East Java, a region that was increasingly becoming a hub of political and economic activity. The fertile lands near the Brantis River, a critical waterway for trade and agriculture, provided a strong foundation for the kingdom's growth. Nimpu Sindok's reign in Tamlang laid the groundwork for the flourishing of the Isiana dynasty and the eventual rise of East Java as the center of power in the Javanese world. In 937, less than a decade after relocating to Tamlang, Nimpu Sindok moved the capital again, this time to Wachugala, another site near the banks of the Brantis River in what is now Jombang in East Java. This further relocation reflects Nimpu Sindok's continuous efforts to secure the kingdom's political stability and strengthen its economic position. Wachugala, located in a strategic area along the river, offered better access to regional trade routes and provided a defensible location against potential threats. By establishing the capital in this area, Nimpu Sindok ensured that the kingdom could thrive in a more stable and prosperous environment, far from the volcanic dangers of central Java and the political threats from rival kingdoms like Srivijaya. The series of moves initiated by Nimpu Sindok highlights the fluid nature of power in the Indonesian archipelago during this period. Kings and rulers were often forced to adapt to both natural disasters and political challenges, making strategic relocations of their capitals to ensure the survival and prosperity of their kingdoms. Nimpu Sindok's decision to relocate the capital twice within less than a decade shows his adaptability and pragmatism in the face of these challenges. His reign, characterized by these moves, underscores the dynamic and shifting landscape of power in early Java, where rulers had to be responsive to both external threats and the natural environment. In the year 980, a significant dynastic marriage took place between Princess Mahendradatta of the Javanese Isiana dynasty and King Udayana of the Balinese Warmadwa dynasty. This marriage was not only a union of two powerful individuals, but also a strategic alliance between two influential kingdoms in the Indonesian archipelago. The Isiana dynasty, established by Nimpu Sindok in East Java, was a prominent political force in Java, while the Warmadwa dynasty, which ruled Bali, had established itself as a key power in the island's governance. The marriage symbolized a strengthening of political ties and marked an important moment in the history of both Java and Bali. Princess Mahendradatta, also known as Gunapriyadharmapatni, was a woman of high status and cultural importance. As a member of the royal family in East Java, her marriage to Udayana served to solidify the relationship between the two dynasties and promoted political stability in the region. Dynastic marriages were a common practice among Southeast Asian kingdoms, as they were used to secure alliances, ensure mutual support, and promote peace between neighboring regions. By marrying into the Balinese royal family, Mahendradatta brought the influence of the Izyana dynasty to Bali, fostering cultural and political exchanges between the two islands. King Udayana, her husband, was an influential ruler of the Warmadewa dynasty. His marriage to a Javanese princess reflected Bali's increasing engagement with the larger political dynamics of the region. Under Udayana's reign, Bali experienced a period of relative peace and prosperity, and his marriage to Mahendradatta further enhanced his legitimacy as a ruler by connecting him to the powerful Izyana dynasty. The union between Udayana and Mahendradatta also allowed for a closer relationship between the two kingdoms, encouraging trade, religious exchanges, and cultural interactions. This marriage strengthened the influence of Java in Bali and helped integrate the island more deeply into the Hindu-Buddhist cultural sphere of the time. The influence of Mahendradatta and Udayana extended beyond political alliances. Their marriage resulted in the birth of one of the most famous figures in Indonesian history, Airlangga, who would go on to become a legendary king in Java. Airlangga's reign would be marked by his efforts to reunify and stabilize the kingdoms of Java, following a period of political fragmentation. As the son of a Javanese princess and a Balinese king, Airlangga embodied the union of these two powerful regions, and his future accomplishments would serve as a testament to the enduring legacy of his parents' marriage. Through Airlangga, the legacy of the Izyana and Warmadewa dynasties continued to influence the political landscape of both Java and Bali. In the year 990, King Dharmawangsa of the Mataram Kingdom in East Java launched a daring naval invasion against the powerful maritime kingdom of Srivijaya, headquartered in Palembang, Sumatra. This bold military campaign was driven by Dharmawangsa's ambition to extend his influence and challenge Srivijaya's dominance over regional trade routes in the Indonesian archipelago. At the time, Srivijaya controlled crucial parts of the international maritime network, particularly the Malacca Strait, which was vital for trade between China, India, and Southeast Asia. By attempting to conquer Srivijaya, Dharmawangsa sought not only to expand his territorial control, but also to weaken his rival's stranglehold on regional commerce. Dharmawangsa's decision to attack Srivijaya reflected the growing tension between the two powerful kingdoms. Srivijaya's dominance as a thalassocracy had long been a source of frustration for other regional powers, including Mataram, which had its own aspirations of becoming a major player in trade. The invasion was part of a broader rivalry between Javanese and Sumatran polities, each vying for control over key trade routes and influence in the region. Mataram, being primarily land-based, lacked the extensive maritime network that Srivijaya had developed, and Dharmawangsa saw military conquest as a way to overcome this disadvantage and assert Mataram's place in the regional hierarchy. Despite Dharmawangsa's ambition and the scale of the naval invasion, the campaign ultimately ended in failure. Srivijaya's naval defenses were formidable, and the kingdom had established strong diplomatic and military alliances with other regional powers, including China. Srivijaya's ability to repel the invasion demonstrated not only its military strength, but also its resilience as a maritime empire. The failure of Dharmawangsa's invasion highlighted the difficulty of waging war across the seas, especially against a well-established naval power like Srivijaya. The defeat also revealed the limitations of Mataram's military reach, as the kingdom was more accustomed to land-based conflicts than complex naval operations. The unsuccessful invasion had significant consequences for both kingdoms. For Mataram, the failure to conquer Srivijaya weakened Dharmawangsa's prestige and may have led to internal instability within the kingdom. The financial and military resources expended on the campaign strained the kingdom's economy, and Dharmawangsa's ambitions were left unfulfilled. For Srivijaya, the victory solidified its dominance over regional trade and further cemented its reputation as a powerful and resilient empire. Srivijaya's ability to withstand external threats demonstrated the strength of its leadership and the effectiveness of its naval power, ensuring its continued control over the trade routes in Southeast Asia. Dharmawangsa's failed attempt to conquer Srivijaya in 990 is a significant episode in Indonesian history, reflecting the broader geopolitical struggles between the Javanese and Sumatran kingdoms. It underscores the complexities of regional power dynamics and the challenges that inland kingdoms like Mataram faced when trying to compete with maritime empires like Srivijaya. While the invasion was ultimately unsuccessful, it highlights the ambitions of Javanese rulers during this period and the lengths to which they were willing to go to expand their influence. The rivalry between Mataram and Srivijaya would continue to shape the political landscape of the Indonesian archipelago in the centuries to follow. In the year 996, King Dharmawangsa of the Mataram Kingdom commissioned the translation of the Indian epic, the Mahabharata, into Old Javanese, marking a significant moment in the cultural and literary history of Indonesia. This translation was not merely an artistic or religious endeavor. It also served to reinforce Dharmawangsa's position as a cultured and enlightened ruler who was in touch with the religious and philosophical currents of his time. The Mahabharata, with its complex narratives of war, duty, and morality, resonated deeply with Javanese society, particularly the ruling elite. By commissioning this translation, Dharmawangsa sought to align his kingdom with the grand Hindu traditions that were spreading throughout Southeast Asia, thus strengthening his authority and the cultural identity of Mataram. The Mahabharata translation into Old Javanese also played a critical role in shaping the development of Javanese literature and philosophy. It became a source of inspiration for later works of literature and theater, deeply influencing the way Javanese culture absorbed and interpreted Hindu ideals. Dharmawangsa's decision to bring this epic into the local language ensured that its themes of heroism, loyalty, and the struggle between good and evil could be understood and embraced by a wider audience. This translation effort underlined the Mataram Kingdom's role as a center of learning and religious life, and helped to solidify the spread of Hinduism on the island of Java. However, just a decade later, in 1006, Dharmawangsa's reign came to a violent and abrupt end with the fall of the Mataram Kingdom. King Wurawari of Loram, a possible ally of Srivijaya, launched a devastating invasion that led to the destruction of Mataram. The timing of this invasion suggests that it may have been part of a larger conflict between Mataram and Srivijaya, the powerful maritime empire that controlled much of the region's trade routes. Srivijaya had likely viewed Dharmawangsa's earlier naval attack on Palembang in 990 as a direct threat to its dominance, and Wurawari's invasion was possibly a retaliatory strike, carried out to weaken Mataram's influence in Java. The fall of Mataram under the attack from Wurawari was a catastrophic event for the kingdom. Historical sources suggest that the capital was sacked, and many members of the royal family were killed. Dharmawangsa himself likely perished in the invasion, leaving the kingdom in disarray. The destruction of Mataram marked the end of its dominance in central Java and created a power vacuum in the region. In the chaos that followed, it would be years before another strong ruler would emerge to restore unity and order in Java, as local power centers vied for control in the absence of central authority. In the year 1019, Erlangga, the son of King Udayana of Bali and Queen Mahendradata of Java, established the kingdom of Kahuripan in East Java. This marked the beginning of his reign as one of the most celebrated kings in Javanese history. Erlangga came to power during a period of chaos and political fragmentation, following the fall of the Mataram kingdom in 1006, when King Dharmawangsa's realm was destroyed by King Wurawari's invasion. Having narrowly escaped the invasion as a young prince, Airlangga spent years in exile before being called upon by the people of Java to restore order and reunify the kingdom. His establishment of Kahuripan symbolized not only his return to power, but also the beginning of a new era of stability and prosperity in Java. Airlangga's creation of the kingdom of Kahuripan was more than a political act. It was a strategic effort to restore governance and rebuild the shattered region. The kingdom, centered around the fertile and economically significant Brantas River in East Java, allowed Airlangga to secure control over important agricultural and trade areas. The Brantas River served as a vital artery for commerce, connecting inland agricultural communities with coastal trade networks, which had been disrupted following the collapse of Mataram. By establishing Kahuripan in this area, Airlangga ensured that his new kingdom could quickly recover economically and reassert its influence over Java's internal and external trade. One of Airlangga's major challenges upon founding Kahuripan was to consolidate his authority over the various factions and regions that had broken away after the fall of Mataram. His reign was marked by numerous military campaigns to subdue rival leaders and reunite Java under a single political entity. Airlangga proved to be an effective military strategist and diplomat, negotiating alliances and using force when necessary to reestablish control. Over time, he succeeded in bringing much of East Java under his rule, laying the foundation for a unified kingdom. His efforts not only restored political stability to the region, but also allowed for the resurgence of cultural and religious activities, which had been disrupted by years of conflict. Airlangga is also remembered for his commitment to infrastructure development and public works, which were essential in rebuilding the kingdom. Under his rule, the construction of roads, irrigation systems, and temples flourished, helping to stimulate economic growth and support agricultural production. Airlangga recognized the importance of religious patronage in securing his legitimacy as a ruler, and he actively supported both Hinduism and Buddhism, which were practiced side by side in his kingdom. The famous Temple of Belahan, built during his reign, became a symbol of his dedication to both religion and governance. His policies fostered a period of relative peace and prosperity, which allowed the kingdom of Kahuripan to thrive as a political and cultural center in Java. In the year 1025, Rajendra Chola, the powerful king of the Chola dynasty from South India, launched a successful naval expedition that resulted in the conquest of several important territories belonging to the Srivijaya Empire, a dominant maritime kingdom in Southeast Asia. Rajendra's campaign was a bold and calculated move to assert Chola power over the region's lucrative trade routes, particularly those linking China, India, and the Islamic world. The Chola conquest targeted key Srivijayan territories such as Panay in Sumatra and Kataram, modern-day Kedah in Malaysia, both of which were important trade and cultural hubs within the Srivijayan realm. The occupation of these areas by the Cholas marked a significant disruption to Srivijaya's dominance over the region's trade networks. The conquest of Panay and Kataram was part of a broader series of raids and military campaigns launched by the Cholas against the Srivijaya Empire. Rajendra Chola, having established his supremacy over much of South India and Sri Lanka, sought to expand his influence over the seas and gain control of the vital maritime trade routes that Srivijaya controlled. By launching his navy across the Bay of Bengal, Rajendra extended Chola power into Southeast Asia, engaging in battles with Srivijayan forces and capturing important coastal cities. The successful raids not only weakened Srivijaya, but also enhanced Chola prestige and influence across the Indian Ocean, asserting their naval dominance over the region. Srivijaya, which had long been the dominant maritime power in Southeast Asia, suffered a major blow from the Chola attacks. The loss of key territories such as Panay and Kataram severely weakened Srivijaya's ability to control trade through the Straits of Malacca, which was crucial for the empire's economic strength. While the Srivijayans eventually regained control over some of the lost territories, the disruption caused by the Chola invasion had long-lasting consequences for their empire. The Chola raids also revealed vulnerabilities in Srivijaya's naval defenses and highlighted the empire's over-reliance on controlling trade networks without a robust military to defend them from external threats. For the Cholas, the conquest of Srivijayan territories was not only a demonstration of military might, but also a strategic move to secure their dominance over the regional trade routes. The Chola dynasty had long been a powerful force in South India, and their maritime ambitions extended across the Indian Ocean. By capturing Panay and Kataram, Rajendra Chola not only secured access to the rich resources of the Srivijayan Empire, but also positioned the Cholas as a dominant power in Southeast Asian trade. The campaign helped the Cholas establish diplomatic and economic ties with China and other kingdoms in the region, further enhancing their influence and wealth. Rajendra Chola's conquest of Srivijayan territories in 1025 stands as a key moment in the history of both India and Southeast Asia. It marked a temporary shift in the balance of power in the region, with the Cholas asserting their naval supremacy over a rival empire. Although the Cholas did not maintain permanent control over the conquered territories, the impact of their raids was felt for years to come. The weakening of Srivijaya's hold on the region ultimately contributed to the gradual decline of the empire, while the Cholas strengthened their reputation as a formidable naval and imperial power. This episode underscores the interconnectedness of the Indian Ocean world and the complex interactions between South and Southeast Asian powers during the medieval period. In the year 1030, the Sangyang Tepak inscription was carved along the banks of the Saketi River in Sibadak, Sukabumi, West Java. This important inscription provides a glimpse into the early history of the Kingdom of Sunda and the significance of sacred spaces in the region. The inscription, written in Old Sundanese, declares the establishment of a sacred forest, or Hutan Larangan, under the protection of the kingdom. This sacred forest was likely designated for religious purposes, where rituals were performed, and access was restricted to preserve its sanctity. The protection of such areas highlights the deep connection between the Sunda kingdom and the natural environment, as well as the spiritual beliefs of the Sundanese people. The mention of the Kingdom of Sunda in the Sangyang Tepak inscription is one of the earliest records of its existence, suggesting that by the early 11th century, the Sunda kingdom had established itself as a significant political entity in West Java. The kingdom likely emerged as a successor to the earlier Tarumanagara kingdom, which had controlled much of the region in previous centuries. The Sunda kingdom's control over the area surrounding the Saketi River indicates its expanding influence over the fertile and strategically important regions of West Java. The kingdom was known for its strong agricultural base and access to key trade routes that connected the inland regions of Java to the coast. The establishment of the sacred forest, as mentioned in the inscription, also reflects the role of the Sunda kings as protectors of both the spiritual and physical well-being of the kingdom. Sacred forests were considered places of great religious importance, where the gods and spirits resided. By protecting these areas, the king reinforced his legitimacy as a ruler blessed by the divine. The sacred forest served not only as a religious site, but also as a symbol of the Sunda kingdom's authority over the land and its resources. The inscription's emphasis on the protection of the forest suggests a system of governance that was deeply intertwined with the preservation of nature and spiritual practices. The location of the Sangyang Tepak inscription along the Saketi River further underscores the importance of rivers as life-sustaining forces in ancient Sundanese society. Rivers were vital for irrigation, agriculture, transportation, and trade, and they played a central role in the economic and cultural life of the kingdom. By placing the inscription near the riverbank, the Sunda rulers were perhaps signaling their connection to the land and water, which were essential to the prosperity of their kingdom. The inscription's proximity to the river also suggests that the sacred forest it references may have been located nearby, adding to the spiritual significance of the river itself. In the year 1041, King Erlangga of the Kahuripan Kingdom made a momentous decision to divide his kingdom into two separate entities, Janggala and Kediri, also known as Kediri. This division marked the end of Erlangga's direct rule and the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Java, as he abdicated the throne in favor of his successors. Erlangga's decision to split the kingdom was driven by his desire to prevent conflict between his sons over the succession, ensuring that peace and stability would continue in the region. By dividing the kingdom into two realms, each governed by one of his sons, Erlangga aimed to avoid the kind of civil wars that had destabilized other kingdoms in the past. The two kingdoms, Janggala and Kediri, were established along territorial lines that divided the fertile lowlands and key trade routes of East Java. Janggala, located in the northern coastal regions, included important ports and access to maritime trade, while Kediri, situated inland, controlled much of the agricultural heartland and vital river systems. This division not only reflected the geographical and economic distinctions between the regions, but also sought to balance the power and resources of the two kingdoms, ensuring that neither had a clear advantage over the other. Erlangga's careful planning demonstrated his deep understanding of the political dynamics and geographical realities of his kingdom. Erlangga's abdication and decision to retire to a life of religious devotion is another significant aspect of this historical moment. After securing the future of his kingdom through its division, Erlangga withdrew from political life and entered an ascetic life as a hermit, embracing the spiritual path of a rishi, sage. This was a common practice for rulers in ancient Java, where kings often sought spiritual enlightenment in their later years after fulfilling their worldly duties. Erlangga's choice to abdicate in favor of his sons allowed him to focus on religious pursuits, while ensuring that the political legacy of his reign would be preserved through the continued governance of Janggala and Kediri. Despite Erlangga's intentions, the division of Kahuripan into Janggala and Kediri did not entirely prevent conflict between the two kingdoms. Over the following centuries, rivalries between Janggala and Kediri would emerge, with both kingdoms vying for dominance in East Java. The division led to periods of tension and warfare as each kingdom sought to expand its influence and control over key trade routes and agricultural resources. While Erlangga's solution provided temporary stability, the long-term consequences of the split contributed to the fragmentation of political power in Java, setting the stage for future struggles between regional rulers.